Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen creates a list of rules for her family's Thanksgiving. Am I the jerk for refusing to host Thanksgiving after my sister handed out a family code of conduct contract? This happened recently and I'm still baffled. For context, I, 32 female, have hosted Thanksgiving for my family every year since I moved into my house 5 years ago. It's always been a little messy and chaotic, but that's part of the charm, right? This year, my sister, who's 29, decided she wanted to help bring some order to the gathering. At first, I thought she meant coordinating who would bring what dishes or helping with cleaning. Instead, she showed up at my house last week with printed copies of what she called a family code of conduct. She handed these out and insisted everyone read and sign them before attending Thanksgiving. Some highlights included a rule against overlapping conversations at the dinner table, with suggestions for taking turns like a respectful debate club. A ban on political or controversial topics, with her as the final arbiter of what was too heated. A dress code of smart casual because holiday photos should reflect well on the family. Assigned seating that she claimed was based on optimal personal compatibility. She was completely serious. When I laughed and said, "You can't be serious," she accused me of not taking her efforts to improve family dynamics seriously. I told her I wasn't going to enforce a code of conduct at my house, and that if she wanted to micromanage Thanksgiving, she could host it herself. She doubled down, saying I was being ungrateful and stubborn. At that point, I decided to cancel hosting altogether. Now the family is mad at me. My mom thinks I should have just humored her for the day to keep the peace, while my brother, who's 35, is refusing to go anywhere unless no one tries to draft a holiday constitution. I'm torn. Was I wrong for standing my ground, or should I have let her run the day just to keep the peace? Just host your brother. Tell everyone else that if they're happy about a code of conduct, they're free to attend your sister's house. However, you will not be hosting. I'm with your brother. This would make me skip Thanksgiving altogether, not the jerk. If she wants to be the Thanksgiving police, she's welcome to attempt this at her own house. Simple fix. Tell her she's welcome to not come to your home for Thanksgiving. Host the family members who are willing to come. Never do something to keep the peace. That just leads to more problems down the road. When your parents get upset and say anything again, let them know they're welcome to go to your sister's and live by her rules for the holiday. Thanksgiving is stressful enough without BS rules. My mother-in-law has only a couple of rules. 1. Food will be on the table as soon as it's done in the afternoon. If you can't make it on time, there will be leftovers. 2. No one may talk about religion or politics. 3. Little kids may have chicken nuggets if they want them. These rules prevent drama. Honestly, you're the jerk. You shouldn't cancel because she's being extreme. Why punish the whole family because she's being rude? Why not punish the rude person alone? Just host. Tell her she can come or she can have a contract, but there won't be both at your house. Let her deal with being ignored all day when no one wants to follow her rules. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. To be fair, some families need a code of conduct for the holidays. If your family doesn't, consider yourself lucky. Am I the jerk for telling my dad's ex she can't stay with us even if she was evicted and lost her car keys at our house? I've been living with and caring for my father, who has dementia caused by Parkinson's and strokes, for the past few years. It's been challenging, but I've been managing things as best I can. A few months ago, one of his ex-girlfriends showed up out of the blue. My dad started saying we needed to help her out, like giving her one of his cars, because she's fallen on hard times. Given his condition and how easily he can be manipulated, this immediately raised alarms for me. Yesterday, she rang every alarm bell possible. She showed up again, this time with her car full of belongings, and acted like she couldn't leave. I say acted because when it came time for her to leave, she claimed it was too dark to drive, even if she managed to find her keys. I told her firmly that she couldn't stay with us. We don't have the space, and she needed to figure out her situation, whether by finding her keys or going to the hotel she claimed to have already booked. She agreed, went back to her car, and sat there in complete darkness for 45 minutes without even turning on a cabin light. Then she came back inside and said she couldn't find her keys, adding that even if she did, she wouldn't drive because it was too dark. I asked her how she expected to find her keys in a pitch-black car without any light, and her response was a bizarre, slurred excuse about trying to compose herself. It honestly sounded like a bad actor pretending to be drunk. She then accused me of rushing her and told me I needed to respect my elders more. At this point, I flat out asked if she was drunk. She dodged the question and tried to change the subject. I asked again what she had been doing in her car for all that time, but she just walked out without answering. My dad later told me her car was packed with her belongings because she had been evicted for refusing to pay rent. Apparently, she felt she was being overcharged, even though it was one of the cheapest apartments in town. From what I can piece together, she has nowhere to go and was trying to force her way into staying with us. I ended up driving her to the hotel she mentioned earlier. On the way, I asked her again what she'd been doing in her car in the dark. Her response? She hated sitting in a car with me and would never want to live with us. Then she added that she had been feeling around in the dark for her keys. I told her that didn't sound believable and made it clear she needed to get her stuff today without any further drama. I'm concerned she'll try to prolong the situation, maybe by claiming her keys are gone for good or coming up with some other excuse to insert herself into our lives. My dad has already given her money once and she seems desperate. I'm worried she's trying to take advantage of him in the situation. I'll have to stay vigilant and make sure this doesn't escalate further. Not the jerk. Is your father elderly? You could try filing a complaint for how she's treating him. The financial manipulation is wrong. If she is also elderly, they can get her services as well. Refusing to pay rent seems like a strange reaction. Maybe she has something going on with her as well. Does she have family? I'd get them involved if she does. OP. He's 67. I don't know her age, but I would guess 60s. Refusing to pay rent comes from her. I think it's more likely she didn't have the money for it or spent it on other stuff. Not the jerk. She seems to be trying to manipulate her way into staying, and you're just protecting your dad in his home. Setting boundaries is the right call here. I taught a joker how it feels. A couple of years ago, I found myself in a tough situation. A job with housing fell through, leaving me stranded in a strange town, in a state I didn't know, with no money and no place to call home. I was desperate. I managed to get a job waitressing at a diner and picked up a side gig cleaning at night. I worked every hour I could, scraping by for 3 long months. Those months were exhausting. I was constantly tired, often dirty, and hungry more often than not. Eventually, I caught a break and found someone looking for a roommate. Things began to improve. I even adopted a little cat who kept me company during the lonely nights. The town was close to a tourist area, which turned out to be a small blessing. Lost tourists meant the diner stayed busy most days. Sundays, however, were the worst. Sundays brought in mostly locals who, as a rule, didn't tip. Without tips, I often couldn't afford to eat. One Sunday, a local family left what looked to be a $100 tip. My heart leapt. That money would have meant food for days. But when I picked it up, I realized it was fake. On the back of the bill was a sermon about the value of God's riches, along with a stamp for the local church. I was furious and crushed. I was working so hard just to survive, and this felt like a cruel joke. Over the next year, that same family became regulars at the diner. I recognized the man as the one who had left the fake 100. One day, I gently mentioned how disappointed I'd been when I realized it wasn't real. He brushed it off with a self-satisfied smile and told me, "Riches and God are better." He never tipped, not even once. In September, a hurricane came through and flooded the diner. It had to close down, leaving me jobless once again. With no work to keep me busy, I decided to visit the church stamped on that fake $100 bill. I figured I'd see what it was all about. I bought a $2 lottery ticket and went to the church that Sunday. To my surprise, the $100 pastor was there, leading the service. The congregation was small, only about 30 people, and the church itself had taken some damage in the storm. Part of the roof was missing. Despite everything, the people were kind. I recognized many of them from the diner, though I hadn't known their names before. I wasn't much of a churchgoer, but the experience was different and a little heartwarming. When the offering basket came around, I put in my $2 lottery ticket. The pastor teased me afterward, saying he had never received a lottery ticket in the collection before. I laughed and told him he'd be getting another one next week. "Maybe God will make you lucky," I said. He seemed to find it amusing. That second week, I brought another lottery ticket. The pastor joked about it again, and I smiled, thinking it was a harmless way to contribute. The third week, I decided to mix things up. My brother had once given me a fake lottery ticket as a gag. It looked real at first glance, but was completely worthless. I had kept it as a little keepsake from him, but now I had a use for it. I slipped that fake ticket into the offering basket. By the fourth week, I had landed a new job in Cincinnati and was preparing to leave town. I went to church one last time to say goodbye to everyone. The congregation had been kind to me, and I appreciated their warmth during a difficult time. Before I left, the pastor pulled me aside. He spoke quietly but firmly, saying the fake lottery ticket had been hurtful. He explained how excited he'd been, thinking it was enough to fix the church's roof, only to realize it was a joke. He told me I should think about my actions as I drove to my new job. I looked him in the eye and said, "Now you know how I felt when you gave me that fake $100 bill while I was sleeping in my car and hungry." Then I left, feeling a sense of closure. The entire drive to Cincinnati, I couldn't stop smiling. It was, without a doubt, the best thing I've ever done. Drinking on my doorstep? Get fired. Many years ago, I worked in an office located in the city center, just a couple of blocks from my rented apartment. This made it easy to head home for lunch, something I enjoyed immensely. It was so nice to relax in the comfort of my own home in the middle of a busy workday. Everything was perfect until summer came around. The bar next to the building's entrance became a magnet for people looking to enjoy a beer in the sun. The building's doorway was narrow, and occasionally I'd find someone sitting on the doorstep with a drink in hand, especially on weekends. At first, it wasn't a big deal. I'd simply say, "Sorry, bud, I need to get in here," and they'd usually apologize, stand up, and let me pass. It was a minor inconvenience at most. Then, one day, everything changed. I came home for lunch and found a construction worker, about 50 years old, sitting on the doorstep. He was wearing a high-visibility vest and a safety hat with a half-drunk beer in his hand. I said my usual, "Sorry, bud," expecting him to move. Instead, he looked up at me with absolute contempt, then looked down again and stayed put. I had no choice but to lean over him, unlock the door, and awkwardly squeeze past. When it was time to head back to work, he was still there, this time with a fresh beer in hand. Again, he refused to move when I asked to get by. The next day it happened again, except this time he mumbled, "Jerk," as I passed. I was absolutely furious. Day after day, this guy ruined my otherwise peaceful lunch routine. Eventually, it got so bad, I didn't even want to go home for lunch anymore. Sometimes he was still sitting there when I came home at the end of my workday. I decided enough was enough. One afternoon, I took a longer lunch than usual and ate on a bench diagonally across from my apartment. From there, I watched him arrive at the bar, order a beer, and settle on my doorstep as if it were his personal patio. He drank 3 beers before getting up to leave. This was my chance. I followed him to his workplace, which turned out to be just down the street. Here's where I got lucky. He was working on a building project I knew very well. I'm a structural engineer, and my colleagues were the engineers for that very site. I didn't know this guy's name, but his goatee and mullet ponytail combo made him impossible to miss. I went up to my colleague's floor and casually asked them what they thought of the site manager for that project. They told me he was a great guy, professional, and easy to work with. That was all I needed to hear. "Next time you're on site," I said, "let him know that it's come to your attention one of his workers has been drinking at least 2 beers every lunchtime at this bar and returning to work drunk. He's about 50, with brown hair, a goatee, and a mullet." 3 days later, my colleague came back with an update. The site manager had been absolutely furious when he heard. He knew exactly who it was and had zero tolerance for anyone drinking on the job, as it posed a danger to everyone on site. He decided to follow the guy during his lunch break, catching him in the act of drinking on my doorstep. As soon as the worker returned to the site, the manager fired him on the spot in front of all the other workers. He wanted to send a clear message. A. Nobody should be so reckless. And B. Word should spread about how irresponsible this guy was. Good luck finding work in this town, pal. What to do after a failed proposal. Now I, 28 male, live awkwardly with my girlfriend who's 27. My girlfriend and I have been together for 2 years. 6 months ago, she asked me to propose to her within 6 months, which I did. During this time, she heavily hinted that she wanted an engagement ring with particular stones that were difficult to find at a regular jeweler. I ended up buying it from a special store. The ring cost more than $500, which was beyond what I wanted to spend, but I was so sure she was going to be my spouse that I stretched my budget. She appreciates it so much when she gets something she loves, and this ring seemed perfect. When the time came, I proposed. I went out of my way to plan something beautiful and creative to make it a perfect proposal. She accepted, but then started crying. She revealed that she was unsure if she loved me because her job had been so stressful lately, and her feelings had changed since she told me she wanted to be engaged. It hit me like a brick wall, and I felt like my life was falling apart. We took a break for a week before deciding to get back together and try again. Things are somewhat okay now, but we are nowhere near the place we were before. That's very clear. I wanted to return the ring since it wasn't engraved or anything, but their return policy turned out to be a nightmare. They refused to take it back because a piece of paper attached to the ring was removed during the proposal. I had returned the box and all of the certificates, but removing the tag disqualified it from being returned. I was beyond frustrated, feeling like I had lost $500 on a worthless ring I couldn't use for anything. What made it worse was that I bought it because the woman I loved told me it was the thing she wanted most in the world. When I told her what had happened, she simply said, "That sucks," and went about her day. I felt like it was unfair for me to take the hit when she changed her mind about giving me any hints or telling me. I started to wonder if the relationship was doomed to fail. Was it even worth trying to mend things? Was I being unreasonable for thinking I shouldn't have to shoulder the $500 loss on my own? And was this store the worst jewelry company in the world? At first, I couldn't let the money issue go. I felt bitter and angry, and it added to everything else going on. However, I eventually realized I needed to move past it. Holding on to that resentment was petty and only making things worse. It wasn't about the money itself, but rather everything that had led to this point. As for the relationship, I wasn't sure if we could get through this. Reddit's feedback was overwhelmingly negative, and most people told me to move on. I just struggled to move past the failed proposal, though. Something broke inside me that day, and I haven't been able to repair it. I tried to save the relationship because I still care about her, but I've been questioning whether I can ever truly let this go. After a lot of soul-searching, I decided to break the news to her. We both cried a lot. She told me she loves me and doesn't want to give up on our relationship. I told her I've been depressed and haven't been able to get over what happened. She said she couldn't control her feelings, but now she knows she loves me. I asked her to move back in with her parents for at least December while I take some time to figure things out. She told me to take as much time as I need. My plan is to focus on myself, live my best life, and see how I feel. If I still miss her and think we can make it work, maybe we'll try again. If not, it's best to end it for good. For anyone wondering, I know for a fact that she hasn't been cheating. I also want to address some comments about the price of the ring. Spending $500 on an engagement ring is considered perfectly reasonable where I'm from. Some people don't even propose with a ring. It's definitely an American thing to be so obsessed with engagement rings and their cost. At the end of the day, I love her, and I still think she could be the one for me. However, we're facing significant challenges. Instead of giving up, we've decided to work through them together. For anyone dealing with relationship troubles, I would advise staying off Reddit. Most people here are so bitter that they want to ruin everyone else's relationships. While there are some genuinely supportive people with great advice, the negativity can be overwhelming. I'm grateful to those who encouraged me to think my feelings through and who offered kind words. Just pawn the ring. $500 is nothing compared to the cost of marrying the wrong person. Job stress does not cause someone to lose feeling for a significant other. Find yourself a new place to live. I think you're using the cost of the ring as the target for your anger and disappointment because you don't want to put that on your girlfriend. Your focus is on the money and not so much on repairing the relationship, which is confusing. A rejected proposal would be a relationship destroyer for me. You can resell the ring, oh well, but your resentment and her lack of communication doesn't bode well. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
I've been a bit stressed about work lately, Reddit boy. Not sure I love you anymore. Just being honest.
Am I the jerk for calling my dad's wife illiterate because I suspect that she is? I'm 26 female. My dad, who's 50, has been living with his partner, Anne, who's 55, for about 15 years. Anne had a really sad and rough upbringing. Her parents were addicts, she was in foster care, and she didn't graduate high school. We've never really gotten along. Recently, my dad suffered a back injury. He told me he was on paid medical leave for a month, but my grandma later informed me that he had only taken 2 weeks off using his remaining sick days in PTO. Despite still being in severe pain, he had gone back to work after those 2 weeks. When I visited him shortly after, I confronted him about lying. He explained that Anne was handling his FMLA paperwork and that he didn't want us to worry. While we were talking, Anne came out and told me to leave it alone. She made a comment along the lines of,
"You're not the only one who knows how to do this stuff. I promise, I've been filling out forms since before you were born."
There's a long-standing suspicion in my dad's family that Anne might be functionally illiterate, but no one ever addresses it when he's around. Her Facebook posts and texts are often filled with errors and seems like they're written by someone learning to spell phonetically. For example, our, O-U-R, is always R-A-R-E, and great becomes grat. I've noticed she primarily uses the voice typing feature on her phone and has Siri read her texts. When my brother was a teenager, he got in big trouble with our grandma for asking Anne to read a birthday card out loud, which embarrassed her. Understandably, she called him a jerk for it. We're not close, so I don't know for sure if she's illiterate, but it's been a long-standing suspicion. 2 weeks later, I called to check in on the FMLA paperwork. My dad said he was feeling better and decided to just keep working. I knew he wasn't fully recovered. He was hunched over the last time I saw him. I asked to speak with Anne directly to get an update. Anne told me it wasn't my business, but if we were really concerned, we should just give them money so he could stay home. That comment pushed me over the edge. I blew up and said, "It should not take you a month to fill out a few forms. You know you're illiterate, so just let me do the paperwork." After that, they hung up, and my dad hasn't spoken to me since. I feel terrible for using her struggles as an insult because I know that it's probably a huge insecurity for her. However, her lack of urgency about my dad's health and their financial situation infuriated me. I thought the bluntness was warranted, but now I'm questioning if I went too far. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. I don't see why your dad can't fill out his own forms, to be honest, or why the two of you seem to believe it's Anne's responsibility to do this for him. If he'd rather work than sit down and fill out a form, that's his choice to make. If you suspect Anne needs help, you can easily offer without insulting her. Wait, let me get this straight. Your dad needs FMLA paperwork completed for his job for his injury. Your dad is not functionally illiterate because otherwise you would have said so and is able to complete the forms on his own, likely much easier than Anne if she is actually illiterate. But your dad is not completing his forms because he doesn't want to handle his own adult responsibilities, but somehow this is Anne's fault? Did I get that right? You're the jerk. That was a pretty nasty insult, and you're also absolving your father while blaming his wife. For not doing the forms he should be doing himself. Do better. Am I the jerk for ruining the holidays due to placing our mom in long-term care? I, 28 male, have two siblings, Theo, who's 35, and Abby, who's 38. Our mother had a stroke in 2019, and our father passed in early 2021. Since then, I've been the one taking care of our mom. I even dropped out of my graduate program to do so. Since January, things with our mom have become more stressful. Her memory issues have worsened, I've been dealing with sleepless nights, and I've completely felt burnt out. During all this time, my siblings haven't offered any help. They have their own families and lives, and the responsibility fell on me because I was already staying with our parents in their apartment in New York while attending school there. Every year, I'd either fly or drive our mom to Virginia so she could see my siblings and her grandkids. Back in February, I found a place for our mom where she could get more consistent care. I informed Theo and Abby about it, and they didn't raise any objections at the time. However, now that the holidays are approaching, they've been asking if I'll be bringing mom to Virginia this year. I told them no, but I made it clear they were welcome to take her if they wanted. I even made sure they were on the approved list of people who can take her out. They both told me it would be too complicated for them to handle. I responded that it was unfortunate, but I wouldn't be available because I was going on vacation. That's when I started getting bombarded by messages from them, as well as other family members, calling me selfish and heartless for not bringing our mom for the holidays. Frustrated, I lashed out at Theo, who's hosting Thanksgiving this year. I told him he had no right to call me selfish. I was the one who stepped up to care for mom after her stroke and when dad passed. I've dealt with the sleepless nights, her wondering, her outbursts, all her doctor's appointments. I was the one who handled getting her Medicaid, and I put my life on hold to do so. Meanwhile, they only got to see the pleasant side of mom. When she had outbursts, I was the one who dealt with them. I reminded Theo that neither he nor Abby even offered to help plan our dad's funeral. They left me to handle everything. Theo claimed he didn't realize I needed help and figured I had it all under control. He said I should have asked. That really set me off. I told him I shouldn't have had to ask. I was only 23 when mom had her stroke and 25 when dad passed. It should have been obvious I was under immense stress trying to manage everything. In the heat of the moment, I told him, "Fine, I'll ask now. Can you come pick up mom so she can go to Thanksgiving with you? I'll even cover the travel fare." He immediately came up with excuses, saying it was too short notice. So I said, "Okay, what about Christmas?" He came up with another excuse. At that point, I lost it. I told him, "This is exactly why I didn't ask for help. You and Abby always find some excuse to get out of it. That's how you two have always been. I've had to shoulder everything while they've been avoiding responsibility, and now they have the audacity to criticize me when I finally set a boundary." Not the jerk. As someone who works in long-term care, you did the right thing. We see so much caregiver burnout. We are trained to work with our residents. We are trained to handle outbursts, dementia, etc., and we get relief. We get to change shifts and step away from things. It's incredible seeing the change in some of our families once their loved one is in our care. The amount of relief they feel. They're able to fully just think about themselves again. Your siblings suck. They're the worst kinds of people in my opinion. The type of people who refuse to acknowledge the stress their family member is experiencing and who demonize placing a loved one in long-term care. My new neighbor is demanding I change my dog's name. I, 36 male, am the owner of a great dog named Charlotte, who's 6. I live in a lower middle-class suburb in an unspecified part of the US. I've lived here for about a year now, and I let Charlotte out to use the bathroom about 5 or 6 times a day. It's always the same routine. I open the back door, Charlotte runs outside to go to the bathroom and patrol the yard, and typically doesn't come back until I poke my head out and call out her name. About a week or two ago, new neighbors moved in across my back alley. I had no intentions of interacting with them whatsoever, except today when I was executing the last step of Charlotte's aforementioned potty protocol. I stuck my head out and called her name, But this time, alongside the familiar sounds of my dog galloping up, was an adult human voice shouting something along the lines of, "Why are you calling my daughter?" At first, I thought it might just be my new neighbors getting into a spat, until a couple of minutes later, I heard pounding on my front door. I opened the door to an angry woman glaring at me. She said something like, "Why are you calling my daughter over?" And I responded, "Your daughter's name is Charlotte?" And she just kept glaring at me. In absence of a response, I followed up with, "Charlotte is my dog's name." And she rolled her eyes at me and said I better change my dog's name because she doesn't want her daughter, who's 2, getting confused and running over to my house. I told her that's not going to happen because not only did my dog have the name first, we have also lived here first. Plus, I don't like strangers making demands of me before even attempting to be polite. She called me stupid and said that a human child obviously has priority over a dog for a name. I shut the door in her face and glared at her through the peephole for a moment before she eventually walked back to her house. Last potty break, I went out with Charlotte and stayed in the yard with her until she was finished. But the neighbor just kept staring at me with her arms crossed and glared at me the entire time. Not the jerk. You're not obligated to rename your dog. Continue with your usual routine. If their daughter were to come over, you just don't answer the door, or you simply tell her to go back home. You can get a restraining order or file a report if that neighbor harasses and threatens you more. Not the jerk. This is one of the dumbest requests I've ever heard. Sorry to say, but these neighbors are going to be trouble. Just don't give in to their temptations to escalate a feud. Carry on with your business and try not to let them get under your skin. Am I the jerk for not following tradition on Thanksgiving? So to start this off, I, 27 female, have been dating my husband, 34 male, since 2018. We got married 3 years into our relationship, 2021, and things have been going extremely well. We've spent 4 years of Thanksgivings at my parents' house, and this was the first time we chose to spend it at his parents' house. When we got there, my mother-in-law, her mother, and both my sister-in-laws were in the kitchen, all helping each other with the food. Me and my husband went in there and talked for a bit. My mother-in-law asked me if I would like to help out. I said, "Not right now. Would it be okay if I come back soon and help out a bit?" She very nicely said it was totally fine and told me and my husband to get us something to drink and hang out with the men and the kids. My husband gave me a nasty look and said, "You're not even going to help?" His mother said that they were more than enough people and she just asked me in case I wanted to help with the cooking, but that they all managed just fine. He grabbed a beer for only himself and went into the living room. I did the same and followed after. I ended up helping them with setting everything up on the tables as I wanted to help out just a bit. His mother did not ask me to do this, neither did my sister-in-laws. Dinner went extremely well, we talked a lot, and I really like his family. When we went back to the car, he started mumbling really angrily at me. I asked him about 3 times what he was saying before he blew up at me. He told me that it's their tradition that the women are in the kitchen cooking, that I disrespected his mom in her own house by acting so entitled. We ended up having an argument about this whole thing, and he has not stopped insisting on that his mother in fact is offended by this. I have not talked to her about this. She did not tell me anything about being offended either. But I know his mom is a really nice woman who would never want to say anything bad about someone. So I'm starting to think that maybe I really disrespected her and she just doesn't have the heart to tell me. So, am I the jerk for not following their traditions? I feel like I was the jerk because helping out would not have been that hard, and had I known the outcome, I would have just stayed and helped out. Edit. I don't know if this will help my case, but I'm working as a nurse and had just come off an 18-hour shift and went directly to mother-in-law's house, hence why I was not that keen on helping out with dinner. I could not get the day off. Don't know if that is even relevant or not. It's just my reasoning behind this. Edit 2. I've seen many people thinking this, and I've tried responding to the comments, but I did not completely ignore or disregard the female side of my in-laws. I was sat in the kitchen talking with them for most of the time, but I also went out to make small talk with the other people. Not the jerk. Oh, so now you're supposed to read your husband's mind? He's the jerk and you're not. And what are you supposed to read from his mind? That you're expected to obey outdated stereotypes? He's the jerk and you're not. It doesn't sound like you have kids yet, but if you do, I have a prediction. He will never change the diapers. Not the jerk. First of all, as a host, I would never ever ask a guest to help me. I'm hosting. If they offer, I may take them up on it, but asking a guest to help out, and especially not something quick like, "Oh, you're going to the living room? Could you take this plate of apps with you?" That just feels tacky. And OP didn't even say she wouldn't help at all, just that she didn't want to immediately. Not the jerk. I really hope you don't already have kids with this deadbeat. He sounds like the horrible type of man who would want his sons to play competitive sports and for his daughters to learn how to do things like cooking. Modern science has proven that sports are bad for boys because it makes them more competitive, which can lead to aggression and feelings of superiority. We never allowed our son to play any sports, and instead we taught him that he is not better or stronger than anyone. Instead of superhero shows, I encouraged him to watch My Little Pony because it's not violent like the Marvel shows. We are also making sure that our daughter does not learn how to cook, because when she grows up, we don't want her to attract the outdated type of man who expects her to cook and clean. I'd much rather her marry a man who loves to cook, like my husband. My husband is a great father who knows his place and has never challenged me on how we choose to raise our kids. I'd honestly divorce this guy if I were you. There are still some good men out there like my husband, but they are not easy to find. Would you like to help means put on an apron and get in here. I know that, but if you didn't know that, that's okay. It was up to your husband to tell you right then and there, in front of his mother and sisters, that it was tradition for the women to bond over service to the family. Instead, he waited several hours to have a tantrum like a kid and acts like you embarrassed him. Please see the situation for what it really is. He thought he married a mind reader and is mad that you failed to know what was happening. He's the jerk. You're the jerk to them since it's their tradition. I'm not traditional, but I'd be a little upset if my husband didn't want to lend a helping hand for my uncles at a family gathering, if they had asked him to and he denied. I'd love the idea of helping family with no hesitation if I had nothing better to do. Even if I was tired, I would help and give a few minutes of my time while using up those few minutes to open up about my day or busy schedule and bond at the same time. 2 birds with 1 stone. Then I'd tell them I need a break because of the long shift I had. Better luck next time. Now you know their tradition. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. I'm still confused about that one commenter that said they don't allow her son to play sports. They don't want him to be competitive at all? Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.